Hi, everyone. This is Lynn Greenberg from Pivt and Harry from Limitless Minds, and you're joining us on our live show called Think Big, Go Anywhere, where we interview some of the most inspiring people on how the right mindset has allowed them to live purposely and limitlessly anywhere. We invite you and encourage you to listen, comment, ask questions as we speak with some of the most powerful thinkers, innovators, and professionals. For today's episode, I'm especially excited to introduce someone that strikes quite close to home to me, the president of my alma mater, Franklin and Marshall College, and the current president and CEO of the Aspen Institute, Dr. President Porterfield.
Yeah, happy Thursday, everybody. So Dan, as I mentioned, is the president and CEO of the Aspen Institute, and he's a global nonprofit organization committed to realizing a free, just, and equitable society. He's a native of Baltimore. He was raised by a single mother at the height of the civil rights movement, and a Rhodes Scholar. Which is a fantastic combination. He's been recognized as a visionary strategist, transformational leader, devoted educator, and passionate advocate for justice and opportunity. Dan previously served as the president of the Franklin and Marshall College, as Len mentioned, where he led the college in tripling its percentage of incoming low-income students and doubling its percentage of domestic students of color. He was named a White House champion of change in 2016, holds a bachelor degree from Georgetown and Oxford, and earned his PhD at the City University of New York Graduate Center, where he wrote his dissertation on the poetry of American prisoners. So Dan's fantastic. I'm just getting a chance to know him. I know Lynn goes back a little bit, so really excited to have him on. So welcome, Dan.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Harry. Thank you, Lynn, for the invitation. It's good to see you again. It's only been 7 years or so since Lynn graduated from college, and I handed her diploma on stage. But you've done some big things in just those 7 years, and excited to see where you're going, Lynn.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I told Harry, and I think a lot of people that are, watching from F&M knows this very well, but, Dan has been tremendous, not just was a tremendous president, but also, have been really engaged ever since graduating. So I appreciate you, answering my emails and calls since graduating, and, just been a tremendous help and support, through it all. So that doesn't go unsaid.
Once you've been a mentor, your responsibility is to continue to answer the phone. That's what it means to be a mentor.
Absolutely. But Dan, I think, a great place to start. And I also just want to encourage everyone to please chime in on the comments. We're so lucky to have Dan post some questions that you have from him. Tell us where you're tuning in from. But Dan, I think the best place to start would be to really, if you could encapsulate what the Aspen Institute's doing.
Oh, well, thank you, Lynn. So the Aspen Institute is a global nonprofit organization, and we work to try to promote equity, justice, freedom. We are, really like a full-service nonprofit organization. We have a lot of different kinds of programs, like a university, working in a range of areas. On trying to address the income inequality, on trying to address racial injustice and other forms of discrimination, trying to promote educational opportunity and equity, trying to foster good conversation and dialogue, bring people together around solutions. We care a lot about innovation and about supporting younger entrepreneurs and trying to scale people-serving work. We run a number of big festivals. The famous one is the Aspen Ideas Festival, where we gather people for 3, 4, 5, 7 days even to focus on important ideas that are actionable from speakers and thinkers that in partnership with the audience can change the world. Our next big one is going to be in Miami Beach in May on the climate crisis as a crisis for coastal cities worldwide. Wow. We're doing one on the future of cities in March in Amsterdam, funded by Bloomberg Philanthropy. So, big cool topics. But we work in community, on the ground, with families that are trying to create opportunity in their lives. We work with systems that need to reform themselves in order to respond to the needs of everyday people. We try to gather corporate leaders and major politicians and major thinkers together and challenge them to apply their talent to find solutions. And I like a lot that Harry works in this space of mindset, because we kind of have a mindset. And that mindset is that people of goodwill, Dr. King said, can put their minds and hearts in motion for change by coming together. And so we try to make that togetherness happen, but in a spirit of problem posing and problem solving that leads to, a better world.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that is really, really cool. And I was doing a little bit of research on the Aspen Ideas Climate Festival and some of your past speakers, including one of, someone I look up to, which was Whitney Wolfe Herd. I saw you interviewed pretty recently. But curious, as the former president of FNM, and an administrator at Georgetown, and now at the Aspen Institute, how you use, people, so students, teammates, employees, how do you set them up for success? And how do you use, you talked about bringing communities and building communities to bridge that success. How do you bring communities to build around them and bring in different perspectives, to help motivate them?
Well, thank you. That's one of the most important things that anybody can do is to facilitate people coming together in order to frame and solve problems. And I think that it's important to be inclusive about it. If the table around which we gather leaves people out, then you're factoring a bias into the framing of the problem. Sure. I think it's also important to try to create a set of ground rules where people understand that they are there to work civilly and constructively, and it's okay to argue. Let's have better arguments, not fewer arguments. Let's really work on the issues. Let's respect each other and really work on the issues. And then I think also we have to especially remember when we're working with teams, we really have to remember that people participate in multiple teams and multiple roles on teams all the time. Our workplaces and schools and other parts of culture, and to try to help the team articulate its goals and articulate its way of working so that then people can do their best work. A lot of the times problems that teams have or dysfunctions in teams come from the goals not being clear, from the teammates not understanding their respective roles of one another. And I think the person in my role has to lead by example, not just give the commands, but actually participate in genuine distribution of responsibility to teams. Now, Harry, you probably thought about this more than I have. I don't know. I'll invite you to make a comment.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was just going to say something about like the role modeling, right? As leaders and mentors, people in leadership positions, like role modeling, what we're looking for, the behaviors that we're looking for, and the actionables that we're looking for is critical. Where you can't just talk it, you have to walk it, right? So I think that's critical. I think that one thing I wanted to ask you, because we're seeing this a ton in our space, and as we work with organizations, individuals, is the impact that the pandemic, and not just the pandemic alone, but everything that 2020 offered, 2021 continued to offer, and here we are in 2022. But this last couple of years, as we all know, has changed the game. At the corporate level, the Great Resignation, which is a popular word, we kind of try to reframe it to the Great Reinvention. People are, yes, they're resigning, but really they're looking to reinvent themselves. But with all of that, as a leader, as a mentor, and checking some of the, kind of the items that you mentioned around how to foster teams and environments that have different perspectives, there's been this fantastic opportunity for leaders to leverage kind of all this change that's happening. Then also this big challenge that exists because we're really having to balance this level of empathy, right, and a drive to results, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to do as leader. It's always been hard to do as leader, but now, given given the environment, the ecosystem we're in, where there's a lot of division, because of a lot of areas, but let's call it politics, right?
Yeah.
But then there's also kind of like this, this kind of American way to kind of build together. Like how are you seeing the impact of building communities and team given the current ecosystem we're in?
Well,
what's been the impact of that?
That's a very perceptive question. And so I would say probably this last 2 years has been the hardest 2 years of my career and probably of your careers as well, and everybody listening. Point one, at the Aspen Institute, we've had to do two things at one time. We've had to cope and we've had to create. And by cope, it means, we lost a lot of revenue that we were projecting because we weren't able to have in-person convenings. Right. And so we had to really understand our business and do everything in our power to save on expense, to generate more donations, and to get our employees through. And we didn't lay off a single person, 500 employees. We were committed that we were going to do everything in our power to take care of our people. And so far, so good on that. But you have to create also. We're a people serving organization. So the world's in crisis. We can't just go into a hole and cope. We've got to also add new value to the world. And so that's part of our nonprofit mantra kind of is, how are we going to serve today in the world we're in now? What's needed from us? And so I think that's one, if you will, dynamic of these times, coping and creating. Second one is that those of us that are in positions like the one I'm in, CEO, we've got to be ready to listen and to unlearn some of the things that we maybe used to do as a matter of habit almost as leaders. And so, for example, in my case, over the last 2 years, we've had so many more small meetings, town hall meetings, individual conversations, phone calls to people that I've made within my organization, so much more internal communication, how are you doing kind of communication, what can I do better kind of communication, critical. And then second, with the killing of George Floyd, the society, all of us, were looking at ourselves in the mirror and saying, what more can I do to promote a more racially just world? And so it's incumbent upon my role to authorize and lead that conversation, lead with listening, but lead it so the organization didn't just hold its breath, but actually examine and ask ourselves, how can we change? And so I say it this way, that the killing of Mr. Floyd required us to look outward at our work in the world. Are we making enough of a difference in marginalized communities? Are we really doing everything that we've said we want to do? Secondly, look inward. Are we practicing inclusion and racial justice in our hiring, in our promotions, in our training, in our sourcing, in the way we spend money and purchase? And third, looking within. Am I myself open to everybody's humanity? Am I myself willing to acknowledge that racism and sexism and homophobia lives in our culture, and so is in our minds and needs to be actively resisted, because we've all grown up in a world where there's stereotyping and there's othering of people that we have absorbed in the language we use, in the culture we watch, in the things that we have said, I can't change. So that dynamic, looking outward, looking inward, looking within, Harry, really important these last couple of years.
Yeah.
And just the last thing, and then I'll stop. I one time heard this former Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, who's on my board, a wonderful person, say, the older I get, the younger my mentors are. And I've tried to remember that too. People my age really need to not decide we figured out a younger generation. Kids these days. The day you start saying kids these days is the day you're making yourself irrelevant. You've got to get in there and learn and listen and partner with young people. So I feel like we've been, I think we're doing that well, but there's more to do.
I think you brought up a bunch of good points. I think that feedback loop, as you said, is just so important in every sense, internally as a team, with yourself. And I think, I think we're all, or we all should be asking ourselves those questions. John Chapman actually asked, how do you check yourself in the community? How do you know when you're incorporating other people's perspectives other than your own? He noted that it's hard to leave the bubble sometimes. Do you have any advice for doing that?
I think it's important to really listen. I think listening is the first step there, to enter into relationships that are reciprocal with partners, with members of the world, and to listen. And then secondly, when you're incorporating the ideas of others, the life experience of others, if they're not speaking, to credit them, to footnote, where am I even getting this idea from? For example, we've got a lot of really inspiring programs that are working on the ground and in community, in urban and rural America, with working moms like my own, with Opportunity Youth, which are students, younger people not at work or in school. And we have this big program that's a program called the Center for Native American Youth. We're working with Native young people all around the country in dozens of locations, on reservations and in non-reservation communities, and on all the different aspects of life and identity. Well, one of the things that I've learned to appreciate this last couple of years better than I had before from Native community and from the Black community has been the reality of generational trauma. I understood the concept, but it's different to feel the weight of it when Ahmaud Arbery is killed, or to feel the weight of it when people going in waiting for the sentencing for the killer of George Floyd, genuinely terrified that there's not going to be accountability. Right. And so this is really profound feelings that come from trying to connect, to really connect, and in an empathetic way, really allow ourselves to open up to the lived reality of other communities, other people that aren't our own. And it's a gift to have that. I'm lucky to work in an organization that provides it. But so anyway, my point being that I have, I feel like my life's been really enriched the last couple of years, as hard as it's been, because I've been exposed to or had sight lines into just, the injustices of our country and the opportunity that we still have to make a difference.
I love it. I love that. And first of all, John, that was a really great question. Welcome to those that are in the chat room and playing around there. There's Darius and Jack, DJ, Sabrina. I see you guys out there. So thanks for joining. Continue to add comments and questions in the chat. We'll bring those up to Dan. So F&M set, really set record, for applications, fundraising, fellowships, and also developed cutting edge, new centers for student wellness and faculty excellence. Why wellness, right? And of course, as a mindset and wellness technology company, Limitless, it's important to us at the corporate level, at the individual consumer level. Certainly in these last couple of years when we started this business, like the wellness and like mental health tech space and mental health conversations have just exploded. But as and by the way, I grew up on the campus of the college where my grandfather was the president of Norfolk State University.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic.
And so I think since 1975 to 1997. If I have any cousins watching, you'll have to check me on those dates, but that's about right. And so I grew up on these campuses and grew up with a grandfather who was trying to turn around a university and really grow a program and strategically and make implementations that would, really build a future for, this college. And so I know that everything you do in that position is really strategic, really important. The fundraising aspect, the growing the footprint of the student body. How did wellness programs like fit into that strategic plan? Why was it important to you and your peers and constituents?
Important, because young people today are a collection of assets and talents and capabilities, and also are experiencing pressures around mental and physical wellness that have been exponentially more difficult in earlier eras. And we have an opportunity, if we work together and learn from professionals in the field, to help students be able to understand how they use their assets in order to create the feelings and the experiences they want to have. And I really believe in an asset-based approach. I think that it's something that's so important, like depression or anxiety, are also assets and can be used and should be thought of that way. Does depression give me empathy? Does anxiety give me an edge that puts me in more focus? How do you regulate the burners so that you're able to use your gifts? And I think that idea of regulating our talents, embracing who we are, and learning how to use and harness our gifts, the greatness inside of us, is what college should be about. Fostering the development of the greatness inside of you. That's point one. Point two, before I went to Franklin and Marshall, and Lynn, you may know this, I lived in a dorm with my family at Georgetown for 8 years. We raised 3 children in the dorm at Georgetown, and my wife is, an incredible saint of a human being to stay married to me in that context. But I loved it so much. I love being in the 24/7 experience. And I especially saw the incredible value that caring adults have when we are present to the lives of developing young people. Simply being present and engaged. I actually think our dog on Georgetown's campus did a lot of good, because the kids saw the family with the 3 little girls and the dog, and it's like, okay, these people are here. They want to be with us. Hey, look, there's an adult relationship. They seem like they're getting on well. Oh, they're so cute, and it was a way to connect, to be approachable. And we need adults to involve ourselves in the lives of those who are developing, younger people, younger adults. There's this great saying by Ben Franklin that says, tell me and I forget, teach me and I know, involve me and I learn. I think being involved with people, adults to developing adults, is very rich. So those are 2 reasons why we thought a lot about wellness. Now that I'm, in a environment where I have only employees and no students, which I really miss, I see how wellness is critical in the workplace in order to give people that sense of balance and of that they're on a journey of development, and they can bring their whole selves to work if they want. All those themes, which you've probably thought about a great deal, it really matters to bring wellness into the workplace.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I think people have really lacked the tools, and when we think about this, the way that Limitless Minds team thinks about wellness, and there's a lot of different tentacles to it, but we're thinking about it from a peak performance, from an activation of potential, from getting the most out of yourself, out of our people, collectively. But most of us lack the access and the tools, right? I mean, like,
Yeah.
I was telling you before we started, like, we started this idea out of just a little nugget of information that, like, my little brother had a mindset coach that was really great, that allowed him to take something that was already strong and flex that muscle, his mindset. He's a savant with how he thinks competitively.
Yeah.
That's going to be your competitive advantage, right? For him, that was going to be his competitive advantage. It wasn't going to be his height. It wasn't going to be his arm, his speed. It was going to be his mindset. And so, okay, let me pour into that, as Russell said to himself. And DJ Eidson and I, my co-founder DJ, who I think is in the chat room, we were like, this is what our people need. Like, we give them all the sales skills, and we were in pharma and medical device sales, and we give them all the stuff they need for, like, how to sell, product knowledge, features, benefits, closing. We give them a ton of data on who to call on, when to call on them, what other products their customers is engaging with. But we didn't spend any type of investment, time, energy, in their mindset and their adversity tolerance. And that tends to be the difference maker, specifically for consistent growth and success. And so, this is really critical in the B2B space, and the corporate athlete space. Now that you are now you're managing all these people, not so much in the academia world, like, and this as you're growing these teams, like, this is the missing gap, not only for your leaders, but also for your individual contributors. It's a part of building community. It's a part of allowing a culture to evolve. And so, what we're finding is organizations that aren't investing in this area are missing out, and they're being surpassed by their peers and competitors, because as you mentioned, like, the mentors get younger, well, then their employees are getting younger, right? Millennials, Gen Z. You better have a solution for this, or else they're going to go somewhere else, right? So that war on talent becomes a war on your own company. But Lynn, I don't know if I could.
Well, you're really in an important theme here, and you use the word activating to describe mindset, which is, I think, very powerful formulation, because it implies that the individual has the capacity for growth.
Right.
It's within them. You're not just talking to them and giving it to them. It's within them, but you activate it so that they can use it. And secondly, the fact that they use it means it's not just you giving an inspirational message. That's important. But also important is that they do the thing that leads to the growth. So not only do they grow, but they know they're a grower.
Right.
And that perception, I can learn. How do I know I can learn? Because I learn. I can work as I can create. How do I know I'm a creator? Not just because somebody told me, but because I created.
Right.
And I like to think that my role as the educator and as a supervisor at work is to create the context where people can succeed at the activity where they're building their growth mindset.
Yeah.
I don't do it for them. They did it, but I coach them on the pathway to doing it so they can do it themselves, and not only do it, but go into the 5 challenges 10 years from now when they don't even know me anymore, knowing they're a grower, they're a creator, they're a striver, whatever the particular growth mindset is.
Yeah.
Right. It's so true. And you said before, which really resonates to that, encouraging your people to bring their whole selves to work, and really encouraging them to take what they may perceive as, weakness, and really taking advantage of it and going. And actually, I've been doing a lot of thinking about this, and I think that the liberal arts education is more important than ever right now, where, there's so much turmoil, there's so much change. And at, schools like F&M that, you really encourage, it's really around critical thinking, and not around, specific, skill sets. And what that allows you to do is really jump into any situation and be a problem solver and ask questions and listen. And I'd argue that, now is really the time for that type of mindset and that type of thinking and organization, especially as a leader, to encourage that.
Yeah, I think an independent mindset and the ability to separate, good and bad information and be able to own your opinions is tremendously empowering. You two are both innovators, and I admire that a lot. People that take the risk to create, and of course, the journey to create the thing you're creating changes as you do it. And there's this combination of persistence and creative flexibility required to respond to the unfolding opportunity. I really value that a lot in many of the different social entrepreneurs that I work with and know. And that's kind of a mindset too, the mindset to have the agility to react and not have to have everything follow a sort of a forced plan.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also a community. I mean, I always say that it has taken a village. You need those people that are lifting you up. You need those people that you can turn to say, I've also been through that. Here were my lessons learned. And I think that's true with, so much. I know for a fact, I would not be here, 7 years later, had it not been for so many people along this road. Harry,
we have a bunch of leadership programs at the Aspen Institute where we identify roughly 20-25 people who are 35 to 45 and on an arc of their lives where values are at their core, but they're achieving a lot. And we invite them to make a 2-year commitment together as a cohort to identify their values and think about how they're going to live into those values when they climb their next mountain. With the idea that our values power us often to do the very greatest things. But life can make us forget our values sometimes because of other realities. Well, in these programs there's about 300 a year who complete their 2 years, and about 3,500 have done this now. 7 ran for president in 2020. It's a very accomplished group. A number are innovators like Reid Hoffman and Reed Hastings. But these leaders who are committed to values-based inquiry, to really coming back to those core principles. Why am I here? How do I want to live my values every day, which is the definition of integrity, so that I can be fulfilled, that I am hearing my purpose and acting on it. And this idea of mindset that Harry's talking through is so important to that, because your mindset, if you have that mindset, I have a set of values with which I'm going to make a difference in the world. This is who I am. This is why they matter. It's why I matter. That can be so motivating through the ups and downs of real life. One of the things we do in these programs is that everybody creates a venture at the end of their second year where they do something they're going to take out of the fellowship and do in their job or in the world. And some of them have really been very successful in either as for-profit companies that have a social purpose or as nonprofit companies. There's about 5 or 6 a year we then gather up for a second fellowship where they work with one of our trustees on scaling their venture. Now, it has to have been very successful, but the journey to scale, which I think you two are on, is one of the most dynamic and exciting parts of professional life if you're an innovator. How do you know what's scalable? And then how do you as the leader foster that? One of our fellows, for example, has a technology that extracts the humidity from the air in order to make clean water, crystal clear water. He uses solar panels, and he's providing the water to Flint, Michigan. His scale challenge is how can he make those solar panels so small that he can provide them to a hut, in Somalia. How does he do that? And that's a giant challenge, business challenge, science challenge, assembly line challenge. Well, anyway, this idea, though, that great work in the public space should be scaled, that's something I really believe in strongly. And, I really encourage leaders like yourselves who are creating new, valuable work to care for that journey to scale.
I think it's really, really powerful. I mean, I have to check out that company.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It's what's really fun when you work with a person who's a creator who's scaling their venture is, they've succeeded, but the scaling part of it is sometimes a total reinvention of the business, because that's what it requires, and so it gets lonely, and that's why the mentoring for the scaler is so important, to be working with somebody else who scaled to go through some of the same challenges.
And you mentioned you were talking about values and whatnot, and I wrote that note down. The values equals a compass. So along that journey of either pivoting, evolving that initial idea as you scale, and we're going through it at our organization as we, there's a lot of ideas. Really, what's important is execution. But along the way, there's all these different, paths that you journey, and you have a bias. There's a reward for having a bias for action, but there's also an organic adversities you're going to hit because you're taking chances, right? Taking risks, and you're testing hypotheses, right? And just the whole part of testing hypotheses is that there's going to be some wrong guesses and wrong educated, decisions you've made, and so you have to really be prepared for that. But when you have that compass, I'm just imagining being like lost in like a forest, like trying to figure out where I'm at. Like when you have that compass, it's like, okay, north. Okay, here we go, right? That's your values, right? As a leader, that's your values. I mean, that's what we really try to do a good job when we set our internal values as an organization, like to think about it in regards to, okay, when we hire people, do they fit this compass? When we make a big decision, or when we do inevitably pivot, does it follow this compass? Because no matter what as the product evolves, the values, they can evolve, but they really should kind of stay pretty core, right?
You got it. Exactly.
And so okay.
Yeah.
Our last speaker, Dan, talked to us about values and correlated it to building a house, and saying that the best values are really that base that you don't have to talk about, but it really guides every decision that your employees make. And it's so important that you keep repeating in different ways through, as you were saying before, through your actions, what those are. And as a leader, especially through times where we're remote and things are uncertain, those are the things and the compass that are really come in to be so important.
Yeah, no doubt. I don't think I've ever had a bad day of work in my life. Going back to coaching basketball when I was a kid in Baltimore, when I was a teenager up till now, so that's 40 plus years, because I've always seen my work as the expression of my values, and so even on a bad day, I have to figure out, okay, how do I work out the problem, but not why am I here?
Right.
And for me, one of the great things, gifts of life, was that with having a vocation, my goal was just to help people. Basically, that was my goal, to help people realize their talent, their best selves, make a difference in the world. Then I met my wife, fell in love, we got married, we had 3 children, and so that's my purpose too. I have 2, and those purposes have to always be reconciled, to make a difference in the world and to be the very best member of our family that I can be. And I whatever else is out there that's hard or difficult, those 2 anchors give me a feeling of meaning every single day. And I knew I wanted that second part, because I grew up in a family where my parents divorced. My mom was a single mother. She went to college in her 30s. We struggled in some different ways, And I knew I didn't want that in my life. I knew I loved my family, but I wanted a more stable family environment than I grew up in. And I've been lucky that I've been able to have it, but I also worked at it and prioritized it so that it would be there for me.
Yeah, I think, and Dan, I'm so inspired by that, and it's something that I've thought about a lot. I've always set out to help other people, and sometimes, especially before starting Pivt, it's overwhelming because there's so many areas where you can dive in and help. How have you kind of thought about, okay, well, there's so many problems going on in the world. There's so many ways that I can be helpful. How do you kind of prioritize that and say, okay, here's why I want to lend a hand first?
Yeah, I think so. One is I have a little box I draw, and this little box, what goes in there is stuff that will not get done at the Aspen Institute unless I do it. The CEO has to do it. Nobody will assign it to me. Nobody will know if I don't do it. But if I don't do it, it won't happen. And that is my responsibility in all the other boxes I have to make sure that I am building my life, my work life, so that I'm doing what the CEO must do. That's one thing, because I have an obligation to the whole organization. Right. Second thing is I always try to think, am I using my skills well? Or is there somebody else who should be doing the thing I'm inclined towards because they have the right skill set for it? And so sharing responsibility, sharing glory for success, sharing everybody being a leader is really important. I hope the people that work for me directly would say that I am their partner all the time, but they are in the spotlight for the things they lead on just as much as I might be. And then I think a third thing to it's worth thinking about is what gives you joy when you do it, and think of the things that give you joy as a reservoir that's in or well inside your body. And if you're doing hard work, you need to replenish your well. You drink from that well. And so you need to give the organization what it needs. You need to partner with everybody else in the organization so they can do their best. And you need to find those activities that give you such joy that you're yourself. And that's why when I was a college president, I spent so much time with students because I loved that. It helped me be a better president, but I also will admit, I just loved going out, and watching the soccer team compete, or getting into a room and sorting it out with kids, trying to figure out who would they invite as a speaker, or going over to the community service organization and finding out what they were about, and doing something every single day, sitting in on classes. I tried every day to see at least one student thing because I myself wanted that. I probably could have survived without it, but I wanted it because it was so invigorating. So I want people. I'd encourage both of you have that in your work because you only have one self, so you've got to drink from your well. Maybe that's a theory of wellness here. That part of wellness and part of mindset is filling up your capacity for joy and meaning, so there's something there to draw upon.
It's so true. That's where it starts, because you can't give anything if you're not taking yourself.
I love that.
Yeah.
And can
it made me thirsty too. I was like, all of a sudden I was like,
I hear you. By the way, I'm happy to say this, I guess. So COVID hit our household. Our children got it about 3 days ago. My wife doesn't have it yet. I'm comparing her with Neo in The Matrix. The bullets are coming, but she's dodging it. But I have it. This is my second day, and I was really tired, and I was really kind of worn down today. I went on Zoom all day, and being with you, talking about ideas that I care about makes such a actual physical difference.
That's awesome.
We appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's great. And that's kind of like, you mentioned COVID, but like the whole pandemic, I mean, you see people needing people, right? Even, I know extroverts are typically people who garner energy from, people around them. But like, even as an introvert, which I think I lean more introvert, it's like you realized how much you needed the people around you, like the community, just that environment. And so, being able to tap into that. And I was actually going to ask you, being an innovator and and talking about things that you really enjoy. And I know you've been kind of keeping your eye on the prize here, given what you're doing now. But like, what do you really see as, kind of some of the most pressing issues, both in education and in the workplace, over the next, 5 to 10 years? How do you
Yeah.
see that? Like, what's on your mind there?
Okay, it's a wild time in our lives.
Mhm.
So I'll say one thing: escalating rate of change in everything we do, in technology, driving so much of it, in how we work, where we work, our politics, the relations of the world, the climate, escalating rate of change. So that by itself is very disruptive. Second, but it's also promising because you can make change fast. Second, cultures in greater and greater proximity and relation to one another. That also leads to conflict sometimes, as we've seen. But greater interdependence, greater cultural context. How do we make that work? How do we turn that to a positive, a source of strength? The degradation of the climate, obviously an enormous issue. It's going to take the great forces of the world in government and business to come together and to partner with those in community. And I think that's a really enormous challenge. And I also think that this big category of civility in America and believing there's a public space by which we come together and work together to advance humankind, advance the country, is extraordinarily important. It's really very saddening to me that the country has frayed and come apart so much. And it also angers me that young people of all ages and from all backgrounds will pay the bigger price for that, because some of the problems being created by our inability to work together means they'll have to deal with them at a greater level of dysfunction than we could have dealt with them. I think your guys' generation is a big part of the asset of this country. And we should all be supporting rising generations, you guys and younger, moving into positions of responsibility and opportunity, being listened to, and for God's sakes, clean up some of the problems right now that your generation is inheriting. I think that the idea that people would stop believing that they are part of one nation is very dangerous to us as a country. Like, the rest of the world's not going to help us out. The rest of the world this is a little bit like, superficial to say it, but it's like football. No one's going to help the Seattle Seahawks out, so they better help themselves out.
Yeah.
Well, no one's going to help this country but this country, and I don't think that's been embraced by those in power the way your generation, I believe, wants that to happen.
Yeah,
that's a great point.
Yeah.
And Dan, I know we're kind of running short on time, but I want to actually hear a little bit more about the book that you're working on, because I know that's something that you're passionate about as well.
Yeah, so I'm writing a book, and I'm almost done, that's about a particular question, which is, what is some of the most enduring value of the residential college experience? And there's many different types of them, but what are some things that really matter? And of course, people learn knowledge and they develop skills. But now, and I'm in Harry's lane, so you can critique me. They also develop from the way that the residential college experience is structured and unfolds. They have the opportunity to develop mindsets. And so I look at 5 forms of a growth mindset that I saw many students at Franklin and Marshall and Georgetown activate through their choices and through the resources extended to them in college. And those are the mindsets to be a lifelong learner, a discoverer, the mindset to create, to make, to stamp your tattoo on the land, the mindset to mentor, to pay it forward, to use your experience to help the next person, one grade behind you, one rung down from you on the club hierarchy, to move into their leadership. The mindset, the 4th mindset, to be a teammate, to cooperate like you did in women's soccer, to cooperate, to learn together, to depend on one another, to realize that a well-functioning team can achieve things that even the greatest individuals cannot by themselves. And then finally, the mindset for what I call striving, which is the goal, which is the pursuit of your purpose animated by your values. It's not just aspiration, but it's the pursuit of your purpose animated by values. And that's a mindset. I actually think you two have it. That you're pursuing your purpose because of what your values are, and that then energizes you because it's your values to keep pushing for your purpose. So my book tells about 30 inspiring stories of real people that I really care about and know and watched on their journey in college, in the hopes that others will say, okay, that's right. Let's invest in education equitably for all. And let's invest in this generation of young people. And what I would just say to everybody listening, and certainly to the two of you, is so you have your work, and you're both doing great work. I hope I'm doing good work. And then you also have the platform that comes from doing your work. And if you can develop through your use of time and the ideas that you've gotten from your platform, you can scale your reach and impact without having to grow your organization, because the ideas can then get your reach even farther than any organization could. And I always encourage my mentees to remember, you have a voice. You believe in yourself. Believe that your experiences shared from your platform will influence people you'll never know if you can develop that. It's one reason I wanted to come on your show, because that's what you're doing. You're creating a platform for which you can have ideas get disseminated into the world in a way that activates other people. I really love that for anybody, but I especially love it among young people.
I so appreciate that. And it's so inspiring. I think Zach Moo Young said it best. He said, so glad I caught this. This has filled up my well. It's certainly filled up mine. I'm going to have to rewatch this and take some notes, certainly. But
Zach used to work for the Aspen Institute, and then he went off to graduate school. And he and I don't think ever met in person because of COVID. So, we got to fix that. But it's one thing that's so fun is, and hey, Zach, is that he played basketball in college. I love athletics. We didn't work in the same city. We only knew each other on Zoom. And I'm, 35 years older than him. And we developed a friendship and a dialogue and a connection because of something that we love and because we're working together. And so, you can have that. You can get that community, even when you lack proximity, if you open yourself to other people.
I love that.
And we have a bunch of F&M alum that have, checked in. I think we have Dan Cafiero, who's coming in from Brazil, Darius Moore, Sabrina Udelson, to name a few. And then I'm going to give DJ
Sabrina,
Edison.
hey, I got to say hi to Sabrina, since I gave all of them their degrees, but I distinctively remember some of the great things Sabrina did in college and making a difference in Lancaster and helping other people. And I hope everybody from F&M is doing great. And, it's an awesome school, and I will always be at the service of all of you as your former president and as your lifelong available mentor, so that we can go show the world what F&M diplomats can do.
So appreciate that. And it's not just words. I can advocate that you actually really do that. So really appreciate that. It's been, so inspiring as always. I'm going to give Harry's co-founder, DJ Edison, who's also, a fantastic, innovator, a shout out, because he's pinging you about that, Harry.
Yeah, I see it. Well, I think he might have been like eating some Oikos yogurt or something like that when I mentioned his name earlier. DJ, I mentioned your name, my friend, co-founder and friend. But hey, DJ, what's up? He's in Cleveland. But yeah. So this is a good group, and thank you for the participation in the chat. Dan, it's so great to meet you. I've heard a lot about you, obviously, from the crew at Pivt, and and your 5, I wrote down, your 5 growth mindsets, and that first one is kind of what this is for me, right? Like these, because taking an hour or so out of your days, when you're trying to build a business, it seems like, man, like sometimes you're like, whew, like, okay, do we have time? Well, from a mindset perspective, that lifelong learner, this is a part of being on a constant quest for knowledge. Right?
Exactly.
And taking an hour of your day, really isn't very much when you think about the 24 hours you have, right? But not only to learn, but to help to pay that forward. I guess that's another one that you have here, right? To pay it forward and be a lifelong learner, so that way those that are checking in will get access. And because this episode is not just live today. We record it and we put it on there as a podcast so that people can continue to have access. So yeah. So I mean, this is a pleasure, and hopefully we continue doing work together. In fact, we really should check in together on some of the things that we're doing, some of in conjunction with Pivt and potentially with the Aspen Institute. So
thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for spending time. Yeah, we really appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you so much,
Harry.
Dan.
Thank
Have
you,
a good
Lynn.
one. Feel better.
Right. I will. I feel great. Thanks to you two. Thank you.
Yeah, be healthy and recover, get some rest, hydrate, fill that well up, hydrate.
You know it.
Yeah.
All right. I've got my Aspen Institute tea getting me through the next couple of days. So
there we go.
Good.
There we go.
All right. Bye, you guys.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you.
Peace. Have a good day.